The night I found out, the world didn't end, it just stopped making sense. I'd always thought betrayal would come with thunder, with screaming, with the kind of cinematic chaos you see in movies. But when I saw her phone light up, when I read the messages that weren't meant for me, it was quiet. Too quiet. Her laughter from the kitchen carried softly through the house, the same laugh that used to melt the exhaustion from my bones after a long day at work. I stared at the words on the screen, words I'd never seen her write to me. Can't wait to see you again tonight. Don't forget the wine. Last time was perfect. Last time. I didn't say anything right away. My hand trembled, but my face stayed calm. I've always been that way, the man who keeps his storms inside until they turn into tsunamis. I walked into the kitchen, leaned against the counter, and watched her chop vegetables. She smiled at me, those same blue eyes that I once thought could never lie. "Hey, honey, you're home early." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Missed you." I kissed her forehead. I don't know why, and maybe out of habit, or maybe because I needed to feel if the woman I loved still existed beneath the skin of the stranger standing in front of me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, hearing her soft breathing beside me. Every inhale was a knife, every exhale, salt in the wound. I kept replaying every conversation, every "I love you," every smile. Had she been lying the whole time? Or did something change and I just didn't see it? The next morning, I went to work like nothing happened. But my world had already split into the life I lived and the truth I now carried. That evening, she said she had a girls' night. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and watched her leave. I waited 5 minutes. Then I followed. Her car led me to a hotel downtown. Room 307. I stood in the parking lot for 15 minutes, unable to move. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown to the death of the man I used to be. When she came out, hours later, hair messy, wearing the same smile she used to wear for me, I didn't confront her. No, not yet. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. The pain hardened. The heartbreak crystallized into something sharp, something alive. I wasn't going to be the victim of this story. I was going to be its author. And I was just getting started. Revenge doesn't start with rage. It starts with silence, the kind that burns. For 3 days, I said nothing. I played my part perfectly. The loving husband, the man who still smiled across the dinner table, who kissed her goodnight, who asked about her day. Inside, I was studying her every movement, every nervous laugh, every text she tried to hide. When you love someone, you know their rhythms. When they betray you, you learn to read the pauses between their lies. On the 4th night, she came home later than usual. "Traffic," she said. Her lipstick was smudged. "Yeah," I replied softly. "Traffic's hell these days." She smiled weakly and went to shower. I stood by the window, watching her reflection in the dark glass, her silhouette, her carelessness, her secrets washing down the drain. That's when I decided she wouldn't see it coming. The first step was distance. Emotional, not physical. I began to pull away slowly, not enough for her to notice, but enough for her to start feeling the void. No more morning coffee together. No more spontaneous touches or long talks. Just silence, polite smiles, and eyes that no longer glowed when they met hers. She noticed. Oh, she noticed. One night she asked, "Are we okay?" "We're fine," I said. "Just tired." She nodded, pretending to believe it, but I saw fear flicker behind her eyes. Good. Let her feel what I felt, that invisible fear of losing something you once thought was forever. I spent my days planning. Not the kind of messy revenge that ends with shouting matches or thrown dishes. No, I wanted her to feel it, to understand what she'd destroyed, to watch her own world collapse piece by piece, like mine had. So I started with her lover, the man she thought was her secret. His name was Ethan, married, 2 kids, corporate job in the same district. He thought he was clever. Burner numbers, private messages, fake email accounts. But cheaters are never as smart as they think. It didn't take me long to find everything. I built a digital map of their affair, dates, locations, even the small gifts he'd sent her. And then I found his wife's email. I didn't send anything yet. No, that would be too easy. Instead, I created a new account, one that would reach her eventually, once the timing was perfect. A week later, I suggested we go out to dinner, a date night to rekindle things. She seemed surprised but happy. She wore the red dress I used to love, the one she'd worn the night I proposed. She looked stunning. For a moment, part of me almost softened, until I remembered the hotel room, the lies, the betrayal. During dinner, she smiled and said, "This feels nice, doesn't it?" "It does," I said. "Feels almost real again." She didn't understand what I meant, but she would, because, as she lifted her glass of wine to toast, I smiled, not from love, but from the quiet thrill of control. The kind of power that comes when you stop being the broken one and start becoming the storm. When we got home, she fell asleep beside me, peaceful, dreaming, and while she dreamed, I sent the first message to Ethan's wife. "You deserve to know the truth." Attached were the photos I'd taken outside the hotel, timestamp, undeniable. I turned off my phone, closed my eyes, and smiled for the first time in weeks. Tomorrow, everything would begin to burn. The next morning, the silence broke. It started at 6:12 a.m., a text from an unknown number on her phone. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when I heard the buzz. She walked in a few minutes later, her face pale, eyes darting across the room like she'd seen a ghost. "Everything okay?" I asked, sipping my coffee casually. "Yeah, just work stuff," she muttered, her voice trembling ever so slightly. She forced a smile, but her hands shook when she reached for her mug. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The message had done its work. Ethan's wife had replied. By noon, their world was cracking open. Phone calls, accusations, panic. I watched her pace the living room, pretending to check emails while secretly reading messages from Ethan. "My wife knows. Did you tell anyone? She's threatening to leave." Her fingers trembled as she typed, deleting words faster than she wrote them. Sweat glistened on her temple. I took another slow sip of coffee. The first layer of my revenge had landed perfectly. That evening, she came to me, fragile, uncertain. "You've been so quiet lately," she said softly, sitting beside me on the couch. I looked at her, pretending to hesitate. "Just tired, I guess." "Is it me?" she asked. That question cut deeper than any knife. She wanted me to say no. She wanted comfort, reassurance, the illusion that everything was still fine, but I only said, "I don't know anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. She turned away. I didn't touch her. I didn't move. I just watched her crumble under the weight of her own guilt, not because I wanted her to hurt, but because she needed to understand what she'd done. A few days later, Ethan showed up at my office. I hadn't expected that. He looked like hell, disheveled, desperate, eyes wide with fear. "We need to talk," he said, his voice trembling. I leaned back in my chair. "Do we?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, man, I don't know what you've heard, but..." I cut him off. "You should stop talking before you say something you'll regret." He froze. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. "Your wife knows everything," I continued quietly. "And soon, everyone else will too." His face went pale. You did this." I smiled faintly. "No, you did this. I just made sure the truth found its way home." He wanted to shout, to fight, to blame me, but all he could do was stare. He knew it was over. His marriage, his job, his little fantasy, gone. When he finally left, I sat in silence. A small part of me felt empty. Revenge, I was learning, doesn't heal. It just replaces pain with a colder kind of satisfaction. That night, she cried herself to sleep beside me. I didn't ask why. I didn't comfort her. In the morning, she said, "I don't know what's happening lately. Everything's falling apart." I met her gaze and said, "Maybe it's just karma catching up." She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw guilt turn into fear. Days passed. Ethan disappeared from her life. No more messages. No more calls. She pretended to move on, cooking dinners, asking about my day, kissing my cheek before bed. But I could see it in her eyes. She was waiting for the next blow, the next consequence she couldn't control. And that's exactly what I was planning, because this wasn't over. Not yet. She'd taken my heart and turned it into a lie. Now I'd take her peace and turn it into a memory. I used to believe revenge would feel like justice, clean, righteous, balanced. But it doesn't. It feels like rot. Slow, creeping, intoxicating rot. A month had passed since everything fell apart. Ethan had quit his job. His wife had left him. And from what I'd heard, he'd moved 3 states away. As for her, the woman I once called the love of my life, she was a ghost in her own home. She barely spoke. She barely ate. She'd stopped wearing her wedding ring. But I hadn't noticed until one night when she placed her hands on the kitchen counter, and I saw the pale line of skin where it used to sit. "Are you happy now?" she asked quietly, not looking at me. "Happy?" I repeated. "You think that's what this is?" She turned, eyes red and tired. "Then what is it, Ryan? What do you want from me? You got your revenge. You ruined him. You ruined me. Isn't that enough?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I stood there for a long time, unable to speak, because part of me wanted to say yes. But the truth, the bitter, hollow truth, was that nothing felt like enough. That night, I went out driving. The city lights blurred past me as I thought about everything: our first date, our wedding, the laughter, the lies. How love can turn to poison without you even noticing. At a red light, I saw my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't recognize the man staring back. His eyes were cold, unfamiliar, empty. The next morning, she was sitting on the porch with a suitcase beside her. "I'm leaving," she said simply. "I can't stay here anymore. Not like this." I didn't stop her. I didn't beg or shout. I just nodded. But as she walked down the path, she turned back once, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I did love you, Ryan. I just lost myself." I wanted to tell her I understood, that I still loved her too. But I didn't say a word, because forgiveness, I realized, was something I no longer knew how to give. Days turned into weeks. The house grew quieter, emptier. I started waking up at 3 a.m., not from nightmares, but from silence, the kind that pressed against your chest until it hurt to breathe. I had my revenge. And it cost me everything. I began to write again, not for work, not for anyone else, just to keep from unraveling. I wrote about betrayal, about justice, about the strange satisfaction of watching someone get what they deserve, and the unbearable loneliness that followed. Each word felt like a confession I couldn't make out loud. One evening, as I was locking up my office, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. Her car. She stepped out slowly, hesitant, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a small box. "I thought I'd drop this off," she said softly. "Inside the box was my wedding ring. I couldn't keep it," she whispered. "It felt wrong. You deserve to be free of me." Her eyes met mine for a moment, and I saw something new there. Not guilt, not sorrow, acceptance. And for the first time in a long time I felt tired, tired of hate. Tired of pretending that revenge made me stronger. I nodded. "Goodbye, Anna," she smiled faintly. "Goodbye, Ryan." And then she was gone. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat in the dark. The storm outside rattled the windows, and I let the sound fill the room. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the urge to break something. Maybe this was what peace looked like. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, just the quiet acceptance that some things die and never come back. But as I sat there, watching the rain slide down the glass, one thought kept echoing in my mind: revenge doesn't heal the wound. It just teaches you how deep it goes. Months slipped by, measured not in days but in silences. The house no longer felt haunted, just hollow. I'd stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come, stopped waiting for closure that would never arrive. The wound had scarred, but it hadn't healed. It just sat there, quiet and cold beneath everything I did. One night, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, a real letter, in her handwriting. It was short, barely a page. Ryan, I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, not just for what I did, but for what it turned you into. I hope one day you find peace, even if it's not with me. And I read it 5 times. Not because I needed to, because I didn't know how to stop. The words didn't bring anger. They brought something worse, clarity. I had spent so long building my revenge that I'd forgotten what I was actually trying to fix. I thought destroying her would free me from the pain she caused. But in the end, all I did was build a prison out of my own bitterness and lock myself inside. That weekend, I drove out to the coast, the place where we used to go before everything fell apart, before love became a weapon. The ocean was calm that morning, almost eerily so, waves folding over themselves like they were tired too. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of the water hitting the rocks. And then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. It felt lighter than I remembered, almost meaningless now. I turned it in my hand once, twice, and threw it into the sea. The splash was small, but it echoed through me like thunder. It was the sound of letting go. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry, didn't feel sad, just empty in a way that felt strangely peaceful. I realized revenge hadn't been the end of the story. It was the middle, the ugly, necessary middle that forced me to face what I'd become. And maybe that was the point all along. To understand that sometimes you can't fix what's broken. You can only stop cutting yourself on the shards. That night, I sat by the fire, staring at the flames until they blurred into gold. I thought about her, about the laughter, the betrayal, the silence that followed, and for the first time, I whispered into the dark, I forgive you. Not for her, for me. Because forgiveness wasn't about absolving her sins. It was about reclaiming the pieces of myself I'd buried under rage. The flames flickered, and I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I'd start over. Not as the man she broke, but as the man who finally let go. Final line. Revenge gave me closure, but forgiveness gave me peace.